In an office where silence was worth more than words, everyone knew one thing. The director's orders were not to be discussed. Not in hints, not in gestures, not in thought. Her voice was like steel, her presence like a shadow from which there was no escape. She didn't yell, she just stared, and that was enough to make even the most stubborn remember who was in charge. But one, he dared. Not out of bravery, no, out of simple human stubbornness. She told him to stay late, and he left at 5:01. Small thing, not to her. The next morning, he was called to his office. He went in, closed the door behind him. There, outside the huge glass window, the sky was leaden. She stood at the window in a perfectly fitting black suit, wearing shiny, lacquered shoes with thin, intimidatingly high heels. "You disobeyed," she said quietly, not turning around. "I'm sorry, he began. She raised her hand, interrupting. "We don't have time for explanations. The only thing that matters here is discipline." Turning to him, she pulled a tiny silver remote from a drawer. He felt the floor go out from under his feet. His vision went dark, his head spinning. And in a second, he was on the cold, shiny surface of her desk, as tall as a pencil. Clothes disappeared, fear building. A huge hand lifted him behind her back, lightly, like a speck of dust. She looked at him with curiosity and with slight contempt. Then, without a word, she lowered him to the floor. In front of him was a shoe. Its heel was like a tower, massive, intimidating. On the side was a trail of dust, as if deliberately left behind. She sat back in her chair, put her foot on her leg, and looked down to where he was standing in front of her shoe. "Since you don't respect my orders, you'll be useful at least this way," she muttered, not hiding her pleasure. He tried to run away, but her toe moved forward, blocking his path. The impact knocked him backward, and he fell, gasping with a mixture of shame and horror. "Clean it," she commanded. Every scratch, every speck of dust. He moved closer. His tongue trembled, his hands scratching the dirt from the varnish. Dust and dried marks all had to go. And above him hovered a foot whose strength was absolute. Sometimes it moved, carelessly, lightly, and each time he had to recoil to avoid being crushed. An hour passed. Or 2. He didn't know. Having lost track of time, he knew one thing. He would have been better off staying that evening. He would have been better off following orders. At some point, the shoe retracted. She took it in her fingers again. He was covered in dirt and dust, abrasions on his arms. She lifted it slightly to her eyes. "I guess you've learned now what it means to disobey." She pressed the button again. He woke up in his chair, in his office. Everything was as it had been before. Only the shoes he walked past glistened all too familiarly. And every time she walked by, he instinctively lowered his eyes to where he'd once stood in front of her heel, the size of his destiny.